So we're back, and this is the second edition of the Schizophrenic Rants episode, which I only, dedicate to late night and stuff, where I do have a lot of stuff to think about, but not enough to where I could warrant a video where I do like bit of research, maybe. So today we'll be talking a bit about the political climate, kind of like last time, material versus immaterial culture, and hopefully, while kind of like verbalizing, we can unite you and I, we can learn some stuff about these different topics. So I guess one of the first things I'll talk about is material and immaterial culture, because I think this was really big for me when I realized that there was difference between the two, and a lack of a lack of appreciation for the other. So we culture has a lot of different meanings, right? It can be like like yogurt stuff. It can be um it can be attitudes, it can be ideas, religious preferences, it can be food, it can be all these different things, and culture is a major part of a culture. And we understand this. Most people understand this, right? Left, right, we all understand there's Save Europe, and then there's like the cultural appropriation guys, right? Everyone agrees that peoples have different culture, and that these result in different outcomes. And some of these things are why people think certain ways or act certain ways or have ended up in certain situations. However, I think there's a real difference that a lot of we try to think of culture in, especially the mainstream, right, as like physical things or immaterial culture. This is your like pagoda towers, or your, I don't know, the Great Wall of China's, or this is the very visible appreciation for cows and Hinduism and such. Or it could be liberty worshipping, as in the West, right? Or I don't know, right, like dogs in, shoot, I don't even know where I'm going with this. Like sausages in like Germany, right? This is how we think of culture, and therefore it's like appropriation to try to take on one of these things. And a cultural appropriation is like a whole another video I probably need to dedicate a video about, which I kind of have already with the multiculturalism one. But anyways, yeah, I was gonna go on about how we perceive culture as mostly material, because that's how we view, it's the world, right? Mostly as a materialist place, not an idealist place. Probably something with Aristotle in there, that can probably justify that. But most people can agree that we're pretty, individualistic, and with it comes a strict materialistic view of the world. And alongside that is, we've gone over this again multitude of times in this channel, but the attitude of empiricism, as it relates to a lot of people's attitudes on what they believe and how they treat stuff, especially in the social science, despite empiricism being very, very difficult in the social sciences. And what this creates is that people are unable to actually interact with or actually believe in things that aren't materially, evident, right? And that doesn't only have to do with things that are like literally, physical, like, frankfurters, or I don't know, beans on toast, right? They also, that, tangible also extends to things that we can, see or perceive, right? That would be stuff like, again, like Indians worshiping cows, right? Or certain like religious doctrine or societal doctrine that results in visible behavior. So I guess like the behavior is tangible, even though the idea is not. Um, but that doesn't extend as far as it really should, in my opinion, because a lot of people don't consider that culture has a lot to do with attitude, and it carries more than just tangible material culture, and therefore there's there's a disconnect that people aren't able to see that culture has a bigger effect on populations and activities and actions than you might think. And you might say, why is that? Why don't people understand? And I'll get into like the thing itself, but first I'll address like why people don't understand. I believe that people realistically don't understand this concept, mainly due to the fact that, again, empiricism, like you want to see it. But also, it raises different questions about, like, this whole myth or idea of equality that we have, like tabula rasa, right? If we are to believe that people are all equal, then how can these external factors be so embedded within a whole population of people, and then therefore influence their outcomes? and that's one of the questions, right? Because not only does this have to do with genetic issues, it has to do with cultural issues. Because we've discussed before in this channel as well that like cultures are made of people. They're not the culture isn't a thing. It's a group of people who have collectively agreed to live by certain standards, and that is what makes a culture. And so the people is a really big part of it because the people, again, the people make the culture. Therefore, if you change the people, the culture changes. This has been, relatively well documented across the last few years, decades, probably a few months when it comes to like internet popularity. But anyways, right. So we already went over that fact, and where the hell am I? This is the problem with these videos. I lose my train of thought all the time. Right. So people don't believe in immaterial culture or just like non-material culture because it's hard to see, hard to measure, and also raises very very deep and possibly difficult questions about our perception of equality and a lot of these things that we think about in modernity. And it's interesting because a lot of I'll show some anecdotes about this, but a lot of what we see as problems or differences between cultures isn't really problems with the system itself or stuff like racism and stuff like that. It's more the fact that it's very difficult to mesh different ideologies and cultures together, especially when they actually come from that place. So what I think is really interesting about America, to that point, really quick tangent, is that America, what it does, it isn't a nation of immigrants. It's a nation of immigrants who are then not forcibly, but very aggressively naturalized to the point where like an American identity is an actual thing and skin color is therefore irrelevant. However, like if you have people, white, black, brown, whatever, if you have people coming into America with pre-existing notions that aren't and you can't really change them, right? That's an example of culture being changed by the people who come in. And therefore, by changing the people, you change the overall culture. And that's one of the people. That's one of the more valid arguments of the whole anti-immigration group, right? I don't think in America it has as much precedent, but in places like Europe, it definitely does, right? So tangent aside, right? So what some examples of immaterial culture in action, some genetics in action, and why that's an actual compelling argument against this whole case for equality. So I'll start with an anecdote, right? So I live in a pretty Asian populated area, right? Not my town specifically, but there is a higher concentration of Asian people, especially Koreans, in this area rather than if someone in like Texas. You can probably guess I don't live in Texas, right? Accents aside, right? And there's this something called hagwon, right? This is Korean concepts, and hagwon is like something it's quite foreign to Western countries. It's very easy to wrap your head around, but it's not a very like fundamental idea. So imagine summer school, but it's like every day or like a few times a week after school, 1, 2, 3, 4 hours where you just go there, study, and you work on your skills. You get maybe work to just do packets of math, English, whatever you want. Your parents put you in, right? And this also applies and extends to things like writing skills, right? And you have like SAT prep, for example. And the funny thing is, like, even in these communities, like Asians, Koreans, they're still a minority. They're still a very, very vast minority compared to other ethnic groups. However, these places persist, and these places have find like very much success. They're very profitable. They're very, very common, prevalent, right? For some, I guess some more chain type ones, you might think of like reading towns or like Kumons, right? Kumons is a great example. And the funny thing is, I was just at one recently, right, for like a consulting session because I'm still in high school, right? And looking on the wall of like all like the different like I can show it up. Hey. Yeah. Anyways, like looking at the wall of different people who have accomplished high test scores on the SAT, for example, you won't be able to see it, but here we are. Right, that's like a wall of people who've like hit like I don't know, let's see, 1530. 1540, right? You see, these are all like very high SAT scores compared to the rest of the population, with the average being like around 1,000 to 1,100, possibly in the triple digits, depending on the place you are. But anyways, like here's my okay, wow, condensing it. Okay, Asian people, especially Koreans, manifest in something called local hagwons, which is like an after-school session where you just go and study and you learn, right? Whether you like it or not, your parents are gonna force you to do so, and you're gonna learn. And that's again part of the whole idea of the Asian work ethic as it pertains to education. Education is very hardly stressed. And you might think like, oh, everyone stresses education. This shows something else, right? Obviously, everyone thinks education is important, but like how you go about it, what you do for it, is where the important things come in. And actually, to be fair, not everyone thinks education is important or as important as a lot of East Asians do, or even Southeast Asians, right? And there's a myriad of reasons for that, which I'll like schizo rant about in a few minutes. But like, you look at these names, right? Without I'm gonna redact the first names, but Kim, Park, Jung, Koo, Kim, Park, Cho, Yu, Lee, Minon. I guess that's a non-Asian name. Do, Kim, Jun, Sapir, just Eileen apparently. Okay, Choi, Oh, Kim, Na, Oh, Yang. Like, you see what I'm saying, right? So in an institution, right, in an institution placed in a place which is primarily non-Asian, why is it that the place where you where you invest time and money to learn and just learn, it's not going to be fun for you, you just learn for the purpose of just learning, right, for your academics, why is it the case that it's all East Asians, Southeast Asians, and possibly like Russians, right? It's weird. There's quite a few Russians in there, if you really look, as compared to other races. It's very strange, right? Obviously, like internally within like the micro, like the micro subspace, right? You have in a community, obviously there's like spreading words and stuff, but it's not like it's not a present thing. People know about this. Everyone knows that Kumans exist. If you have an Asian friend here and there, you probably know about this sort of thing happening. And so I came across this, and this really got me thinking more. This is like a perfect example of culture, if immaterial culture, manifesting in a tangible outcome, which is the fact that if you go to any sort of these like kumons or after school programs or hakwons, right, which you don't have to learn the terminology, right, you're gonna find mostly Asian, Southeast Asians, right? You'll find the odd Caucasian here and there, but it's rare. And I've never seen a Hispanic. I've never seen someone of non-Asian or South Asian descent in one of these places across multiple towns in my area. And you might say, of course, like that's like, oh, that's because of where you live. But then you don't. These places don't exist in non-Asian in places without significant Asian communities. So this is an example, right? A very clear example of you see a type of people, a certain set of values, certain set of ethics, an attitude towards life, education, all of these different things. And once they populate an area, they they change the area. They change something fundamental, right? They change the fact that this institution wasn't there and now it's here and it's good for them and it works for them. So my question is that like once these institutions are here, that's an example of positive immigrants or positive cultural diffusion, right? You have these people who really care about education. They set up these institutions that allow you to excel in SATs, writing, whatever, all these different things, right? So why are other people not taking advantage of it? And that's what the ultimate whole like question is. Like you have equal opportunity, right? These places aren't like inaccessible for people who aren't like Korean, for example, or Chinese or like Indian, right? So why aren't people taking advantage of these opportunities as often as certain groups are? And it's the only really explainable option is connections, primarily connections. Right? If you know like other Asian parents who do this, then like obviously you're gonna know, and also the very culture itself. It's miserable. Like I've been in one of these before in the past. It's miserable. I hated it. Just 3 hours of just like you do problems and you see someone like solve it for you and you ask questions, right? It's not rewarding at all. I mean, I guess like for SAT it kind of was for me, but it's not rewarding at all. It's very boring. It's miserable and it's nowhere as close to as fun as a sport, right? Because I did both at the time. But you'll find that outside of Asian communities who try to obviously do both, just like a lot of different people, that you're gonna find people who like you don't really find time to like waste time in your childhood like this. You would much rather do a sport. You would much rather do something rewarding to yourself rather than focusing on education. And the thing is, education isn't meant to be easy. It's not meant for everyone. And I understand that I have friends who are not academically inclined, right? But then why do we expect the same outcomes out of everybody, right? It's the people who are serious about their education. They have all these opportunities. They're there. And not seizing them simply means that you are not prioritizing education. Even though you might say you are, even though you might think it's important, you're not going to actually go out and do it because you don't have that social or cultural level pressure. And that's, I don't know, it's just fascinating to me how that is, like, this experience that I just like had is just looking at that wall just a few weeks ago opened my eyes a bit more to how we talk all about, like, I know, no child left behind, and like everyone deserves an education. Everyone, a lot of people have access to education, and a lot of people want to have education, but why don't they do it? And it's because education, among other things, is an investment. Because if you want to actually be educated and have a very good competitive chance for getting into a good college, getting a good, post, just any post high school education, right? You're gonna need to put in the effort. It's not something, especially in today's day and time, that you can just do by just showing up at high school and caring, right? There's other steps that you could take and that you have the opportunity to take to improve yourself in these regards. And the only explanation for not taking these, again, is has to be culture, right? Because you have people in the same area with the similar economic statuses, right, who don't take these opportunities and instead might invest that money somewhere else, especially for their children and such. And it's like, if you don't want to do this miserable thing, then you're not gonna want, then you don't actually want to be educated. For the same reason that if you hear all these like in billionaires and investors say, like, if you want to be rich, you're gonna be miserable. You're not gonna buy coffee. You're not gonna eat out ever. You're gonna eat the bare minimum. You're gonna do the bare minimum. You're gonna invest all of your savings, all your money, any like surplus. You're gonna invest that. And that's how it is. If you want to get rich while like doing all these like luxury things that we've all been like tricked into, like just being materialist consumers in, right? If you just want to buy your Starbucks coffee, if you don't buy new stuff, right? Obviously it's nice and we all like these amenities in life, but then if you like them amenities, then you don't want to be rich. Unless you like hit it gold with like a job or a jackpot or something, right? And I guess that's a separate observation where just because we want something, just because we care about something, doesn't mean it manifests necessarily into reality. And I guess that's one of the whole things that like my tangent is going to, which is that just the will to do something doesn't manifest in reality. It's the cultural pressure to actually go out and do it and have to, and the pressure to like take these opportunities that is the one that compels. And obviously I'm strawmanning. Not every Asian is like this. Not every Asian can even afford these things. That's some of the things that I should have talked about. But like for example, you have a lot of these like laundromat Asians, right? Filipinos, mainly, who don't earn a lot, who aren't earning in these like high income doctor lawyer positions, but they still manage to send their kids there, right? It's shocking. It's like some kids I know, they're from like these camps, schools, right? They're from very wealthy families, right? Some of them are from middle income families, like myself, and some of them are from people like they can barely afford to like, get there every time. But they all show up because they have this shared like pressure where like we're going to forego basic necessities, we're going to forego these pleasures in life to afford this sort of opportunity for others, right? Or for my child, or and I don't know. I just think that's really interesting because like while other kids I think, oh, that's boring or it's not rewarding or I hate studying, right? That's valid. So do I. But it's that extra pressure that compels. I like talking circles right now. Holy. But like, okay, like my point is that culture is a thing that compels people to do rather than to think, because we all want nice things, right? And that's the nice things humans want is pretty consistent across different societies. But it's the society we live in which can empower us or not to actually go out and seek these different things. And that is the power of culture that we don't talk about enough. That in fact, yes, it is culture that matters. It is culture that decides, how things go. And while we're strawmanning Asians as this like model minority, let's strawman the African American community, right? I know plenty of people in my community, like African Americans, who work hard, who do all these different things, and are not, just like the rest of us, right? On the other hand, you also see stuff, and you also see stuff out there with people who want to stay in the hood. They're convinced the government will pay for them. They're not. They don't care if they drop out of high school, right? Partly because of, again, cultural consequences. If the life you lead, around you and the people you idolize and the people you've been told to idolize, all have these certain different lifestyles, and you don't have this standard to be held up to, then why would you try to like spend your whole day in school when there's other things to do, people to meet, stuff to do, right? stuff you want to do, stuff you would rather do than, forego that pleasure for a sacrifice in the short term. And again, that's not a generalization, right? It's a, again, another straw man, but it's showing the worst and best of different cultures, and how culture itself can propel people to do different things. Again, immaterial culture is stuff like attitude, which can't be measured, and therefore people don't want to acknowledge. But just because it can't be measured doesn't mean it's not real, and it doesn't mean it's not like out there for all of us to see. And I think a lot of us understand this on an intuitive level, but it's, I don't know how it got here, but it's so politically incorrect to suggest that like culture is a big, you know, indicator for how different people act, right? For example, Asian Americans do not commit crime. Like, honestly, compared to other races, white, Hispanic, whatever, it's virtually zero. Why is that, right? It's not like Asians aren't poor, right? Plenty of Asians are poor. It's right. It's a part of that whole mindset, that whole cultural, and what you're raised in, which defines your actions and your reactions to stuff. And ignoring that and trying to pin it on, like, I don't know, Marxist power labels, like, the wealthy and the, underprivileged, and the underprivileged have to steal. That's not real, right? That's such a, regressive way to look at it. There's all these different cultures that stress and emphasize different things, some good, some bad, right? It's not like Asians are like this glowing example of culture being good. In fact, there's a lot of problems with this whole prioritization of education, and there's a whole, we all know the stereotypes and stuff. And there's, yeah, there's a lot to consider in this fashion, because, like, on one hand, there's external factors outside of culture. Again, it's like nature is one part, but nurture is a different thing. And yeah, it's true, but that doesn't mean we can't completely just ignore immaterial culture and the very, very obvious things we see, just because it's not empirically, like, analyzable. Okay, so that's part one. I don't know how long this is gonna be. Maybe an hour, maybe not. If you're here, damn, thank you. So let's get to part number two. Fuck. Shoot, what was it? So, me thinking of, I had a whole like train of thought planned out, but it's like 12:30 right now, and I can only think. Shoot, what was I gonna? Yo, it was something about like history and anthropology. I remember. Oh, right, genetics. Yes, the second part of the whole cultural argument. So tabula rasa, the blank slate idea, which was formed in the humanist revolution, like the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, roughly, was that the idea that all humans are inherently equal, that they're nothing different from us, except for the situations in which we are raised, and therefore a democracy can work because we're all equal, and we are all destined for different things. So this kind of relates to the earlier argument I made about education. It's definitely like not unrelated. But tabula rasa presumes that all people are equal because we would like it to be so. It's a theory. Like, that's the funniest thing. It's a theory. It was never proved. And recently it's only been disproved because the fact there's individual and group level differences and stuff, like literally any like discernible trait, whether it be by race, ethnicity, other like micro factors, male, female, right? And all these different factors that can influence who we are, and we found that relative, approximately, right, I believe that genetics can indicate up to 50% of our personality based on twin studies, which is where you take two twins and find out, like, just period of time, and you find out they, overwhelmingly choose the same things. They have the same constitution. One of my favorite words when discussing this issue, right? Genetics can not decide personality, but it can decide constitution, which then transfers into some parts of personality. And one of the most obvious examples is that, IQ is very inheritable. Two very smart people, you'll find it very hard for their child to be stupid. And you're going to find stuff like, obviously, skin color is inheritable, right? Which can change your perception of sunlight and melanin, right? And all these things that are very micro, but they're very, very real. For example, okay, actually, I'll get to that later. Other things, very, very micro things, stuff like body odor, right? ABCC112, I forget. But certain populations, including East Asians, are very, very likely to have this certain gene that prevents strong body odor. That, then we have to buy less deodorant or not a strong deodorant. So that can influence buying behavior, right? These different things prove that we're not equal. For the same reason, I don't need to buy as much deodorant and as strong as deodorant as, like, I don't know, a white person. A black person doesn't need to buy as much sunscreen of, like, SPF 100 as a white person. And all these different things compound, right? And there's all these different things that we just, we want to think that tabula rasa is real. Therefore, buying behavior is like a proxy for other, like, standards or, like, metrics in society. But to say that, like, buying behavior is, like, the same for everyone across all different types of metrics because we're all equal, that's simply silly. And this goes again to, like, constitution as well. And this is where, like, the anthropology comes back in. So something I learned recently is that there's this gene, DRD4. It's a dopamine receptor type gene, and it basically coordinates, or it tries to reward risk taking. This is very interesting because this differs the very, very there's a very big difference between East Asian populations, East and South East Asian, actually, all of the rice farming populations, basically, literally, right, and the nomadic warband populations of Europe, right, and you might think this is, oh, okay, Asians don't risk take, but they start businesses. That's not the point. This is on a more macro level, on that there's less risk taking and there was a lot less individual risk taking in Asian society. And it's very clear now. It's Asian societies or Confucian Sino societies are known as shame-based, which means that you do a lot of things not individualistically, but in the context of your clan, family, or whichever social group you belong to, right, or the party, I guess, if you're in China. And this has explanations, right? So rice farming worked out very well for the Southeast and East Asians because of their, location, relative proximity, and simply the rewarding nature of the rice farming industry. So I don't know if you know anything about rice, right? I do, right? But rice farming is a very intensive time intensive, work intensive, labor intensive type of farming, right? Much more so than, like, potatoes or something, right? That shit just, like, grows in the ground. You just put it out, or other sorts of farming, right? I know wheat was a bit more difficult, but rice is by far one of the most difficult staples to grow. And therefore, with its difficulty and its large scale need to feed a population with a grain like that, you're going to need a lot of cooperation. And so over time, the anthropological argument is that Asian societies developed lower risk taking because risk taking could endanger the interests of the group. Because when you need a collective effort to try to accomplish this goal of, for example, rice paddy farming, you're going to need everyone to buy in, everyone to conform when necessary, and only in extreme cases would you actually require different types of, innovations. And the way that manifested in institutions is the shame-based institution, where instead of, you being punished or sort of forced not to make things, you would have all this sort of institutionalized fear and, like, shame, I guess, where you are motivated not to do a certain thing because of the possible consequences to what you have been conditioned to hold dear, which is your family or clan. And therefore, that is the explanation for why Asians do not have as much risk taking and from via the DRD4 gene than their Caucasian or like, I guess Germanic's the right word, Germanic counterparts, right? Because I don't know all the terms going back, like, Akkadian's time, but yeah. Where was I going with that? But yeah, that's an example of genetics being a huge factor, right? And that manifests itself in different ways, right? You still have this whole, like, shame-based culture carrying itself into Asian communities in America, Europe, all these different places where where East Asians immigrate. And genetics is one part of it, but again, like, genetics, race or not race, right? Different parts of genetics definitely and 100% do help to decide what we're interested in, what we do, what our constitution is on different issues, morals, and, what our passions are. And so, like, the part I don't get is why we try to treat every human as equal. or or like this idea of like the sameness. I believe under law, equality makes 100% sense, and it's very effective in creating this like pluralistic society we live in today, at least in America. But then like when it comes to like scientific studies and our perception of all these different things and the attitude we treat different cultures, it's this like whole patronizing look that like separateness is bad necessarily, even though separateness is nature. Separateness and like dualities and contradictions, that is what nature is made of. And we're not all meant to be the same because we aren't the same. And trying to argue that we are is, it's fool's errand, and so to speak. And so it just confused me why people still cling by tabula rasa, and the fact that like biological race is 100% real, and that 100% can influence certain stuff in your life. It can be as minimal as how much sunscreen, what SPF sunscreen you need. It can be as maximal as your risk taking and your entrepreneurship and your agreeability, and how you feel about like group social situations. But we don't seem to acknowledge that. I don't really understand, even though like genetics is a part of culture, because every culture is based on a certain ethnic identity, because otherwise it wouldn't have existed in the first place, because that was one of the main indicators of a togetherness. If you look like me, you're probably gonna think like me, which is the best presumption that ancient peoples could have had. Until religion came along, until institutionalized religion came along and started uniting people under that story rather than just being typical Ooga Booga stuff. And I can't, like, genetics and prehistory is a crazy topic to go through. I can't even do that. I don't know enough. But moving on, let's go into our third schizophrenic topic, and probably our last for this video. We're going to be discussing. Sorry. Little thingies. These are quite good. Recommend. Super sour Scandinavian flavors. Scandinavia, it's like reverse. Right? So let's talk about the duality between progress and limitations. We've talked a lot about progress. Progress is one of the funniest concepts and also the most important concepts in all sorts of anthropology, politics, history, all these different things, because there's different attitudes towards progress that can completely change the way you view things. One attitude of progress is the infinite progress model, which is, good things will always happen because it always has been. So we are assuming that good, progress will like sort things out. That if we just wait long enough, things will get better. No, it won't. And you have the other types of model, which is that progress is still up. I don't know. Like our whole zeitgeist is based on the fact that we think progress is continuous, and therefore we must be a part of it. Not must, like we have to, as in like obligation. That we are by nature a part of this progression, right? That we are just another step in this whole progression of humanity from like monkeys to computers and AI. And in this idea, any sort of limiting factor, especially in capitalism, where we want to expand the market and the volume of the market, right? It's frowned upon because suggesting that we should stop progress for the sake of some not non-empiricist sort of idea of just greater human trends, and especially anything in the humanities, like dear lord, anthropologists get not enough credit, or no one listens to them nowadays. Um, dude, I keep I keep blanking. It's just too late. I didn't get enough sleep. I'm on energy drinks. That's probably why. So, how's your day going? Shoot, I was like talking about something important. Something about anthropology and the past and progress, right? So progress isn't constant. Um, Neither is in the world's history. For example, like I'm sure the time of the T-Rex, we view they were like, all the dinosaurs, if they had like brains and like consciousness, we don't know if they did, right? They were like, okay, this is like our time, this time will never end, and things just keep getting better, and there's new animals, and there's new things happening, and the earth keeps changing, and it's good for us. But then disaster happens, and boom! Oh, how could this happen? This is so bad for us. It's a, you know, lack in progress. But then, like, if we look at it on a macro scale, 100 million years later, of like there literally being like nothing alive, they come back, and we looked at it as progress because it's like this, right? It's like boom, boom, and it comes back up. I think it's a really interesting way to look at it, and also wrong in the fact that we don't humans, especially in today, move faster than back then. And 100 million years of crash means a lot more to a 4,000 year old civilization than 400 million years of dinosaurs, right? Or however long like each period was, right? I know it was like big gaps. But then we always like hear those things where like we're like closer to the Stegosaurus than like the T-Rex was to the Stegosaurus. It kind of really puts into perspective how small the human time scale is. And the idea of progress is so pervasive because we want to prevent, bad things from happening to Earth. I'll use the climate change argument, for example. We always say that the Earth is so beautiful. It is, right? Nature is so beautiful. It is, and we're killing it slowly in nature, and we're gonna killing the Earth. So I can like get behind it to the point where like we're killing nature as it is, but we're killing the Earth. Sorry. To the dinosaurs, them getting eradicated, and like tiny mammals and like little like I don't know capybara looking fucks, right? Those things prospering, that probably didn't constitute a good thing for them. All these great beasts and all these different types of like armored dinosaurs, they're gone. These like little shits are running around now. And that's like a degrowth in progress if you're in the if you're in the point of view of the dinosaurs. In the end, the Earth still got to another stage of dinosaurs. They evolved, and now we're here with human beings. And it's so weird because if you look at it in a lot of ways, a lot of the stuff that happened in the past allows for like mammalian evolution. That was great for current humans. All of that stuff was good because it brought us to where we are now. So we view it as an inevitable scene of progress. But progress, again, isn't linear, and it's not guaranteed, especially and only if you're talking in the human perspective. For example, if we had nuclear war, and we like kept pumping out oil, right? And we like, we screwed up all the environments, like less trees. Okay, no trees? Then humans are dead, all right? Let's just assume all humans die. Or there's a very limited amount of humans left. The Earth's not gonna die, first of all. This thing's been around for 4.5 billion years. Instead, you'll see a new age, right? I assume humans will survive because they have like ingenuity and stuff. We control the nature around us. But if we do have like fallout or something, it's not going to be the end of nature or the Earth. Cockroaches will become the new golden age. Like they're going to be thriving as much as the mammals were when the dinosaurs died, right? Cockroaches, bugs, parasites, not parasites, like bacteria that eats oil or something, or like loves nuclear radiation. God knows what, right? And mice, right? We're already seeing mice becoming more popular in the urban environments, dirtier urban environments. So humans, Earth will go on, and nature will simply find a new time, where today we have little dragonflies instead of 6-foot dragonflies, right? Instead of like tiny cockroaches, maybe we'll get bigger ones, or maybe we'll get something completely new. And if there's like a cockroach civilization 50 billion years down the line or something, they will see the human fallout as the best thing that happened to them and another step of progress. So, which I don't know, which is why like there's so much like bad rhetoric in the whole environmental movement. We talked about this before in the leadership video, and there is no like actual consistent leadership in the environmental sphere because like there's no like clear goal. There's bad rhetoric, bad science here and there as well, right? Like just conclusions made by like a panel of scientists, right? Not that they're all wrong about stuff, but there's no unity in that coalition. And one of the things that I really don't like is that whole like extreme rhetoric, right? There's just like a whole rant against the people who say that the Earth is dying.
No, the hell it ain't. The Earth doesn't need humans, and humans are nature as well, right? Just like how if like the T Rex like killed an entire species because it was eating shit, that was what it was designed to do. That's what it evolved to do. Humans evolved to change nature to fit us, and to use tools and such, so that we can manipulate stuff around us instead of evolving ourselves. And to that degree, everything we do is just another part of the progress. Which is why we can't look at progress linearly. Because then we need to understand that, more transcendentalist way, that humans are good. Humanity is separate from animals. Therefore, we should do things in a way that is separate from animals and sets us apart. We have control over our own progress, and that we aren't destined for progress in the future. Because again, progress is only linear if you look at it in the terms of humans, and if you look at every event in the terms of humans, because they only led up to us. Progress is not guaranteed. Progress will only be linear if you're looking at, again, some like 400 million years down the line, the cockroach civilization, right? Like, it's a crazy example, but it's just a new dawn of time. But for humans, that's not good. We do not want nuclear war. We don't want fallout. We don't want cockroach civilization. We want human civilization because we like being humans, and humans inherently have value. I really hope I don't need to make a video explaining that. To grab you with the hands there. I really hope I don't need to make a video like detailing the moralistic reasons why humans have value. Because then I had to get into religion and the whole Judeo-Christian basis on Western civilization, and then I had to get into like a religion video, which I really do want to make, but I still need to do some like self-reflecting more. So where was I? So yeah, progress is not linear, and that we can't just expect good things to happen because good things always happen, because they didn't. They were solved by people and things and events that were intentional and very, very relevant. Case in point, the birth crisis issue. Things aren't gonna fly the way they are now. Like, government benefits aren't enough. Who cares if you have 12,000 more dollars a year? You're not buying a goddamn house with that money, with how expensive the things are gonna get and are. You're not affording, that's not helping you, especially with the expenses related to having a kid, needing to buy an even bigger house if you want to live with the spouse and kid. It's just waiting around's not gonna do it. And if you think to yourself, oh, I don't want to have kids because it's a big responsibility, okay, everyone else is gonna think that, and then we're gonna have no kids in the future, and then we're all fucked, right? We're gonna be old and just die, unless AI does it all for us. And to that degree, like, progress is just not gonna happen. Because again, progress is only linear if you look at it through a human lens. But we must look at it through a human lens, or else there is no other conclusion. And the final point I'll make in this video is the stuff about AI. So something I've been thinking about a lot recently is like reconciling the issue between AI being good for humanity and the possibility of AI being the first death that Nietzsche talked about. So the first death is like the death of the soul while living physically alive, and it results in a lot of like the whole like the screen addiction is a great way to encapsulate it. Just like living without meaning, basically, and with the inability to find God. I find myself in that situation a lot. I don't think I've quite reached first death. But we're on our way. A lot of us are on our way. Where the hell was I? Oh my god. Okay, that should refresh me for quite a bit. However, as I was saying, AI is difficult. On one hand, AI has the chance to make progress, and the fact that it can significantly advance human advancements, such as stuff like possibly like vehicles, right? At a very micro level. But then again, like, that's small. You don't really need that, right? Just learn to drive better, right? If you really need that. But then you also have the potential to like cure cancer, millions of people, or diabetes, all these different genetic issues, or like cure STDs for like little kids, genetic ones, I mean, right? And so you have all this potential with AI, where like it has the potential to do things that humans cannot physically do and will take way too long to do, because it is not human. It can, again, I'm like imagining in the future, 20, 30 years down the future, based on how fast things going right now, AI will be able to farm with so much efficiency. It'll create new fertilizer. It'll be able to maximize and allocate land based on soil quality. it'll be able to manage all of our different places by sending around maintenance bots, which will have maintenance bots to repair them, and that maintenance bot will have maintenance spots, which will be ultimately managed by a human. So you have these like potential, right? You have all this potential to make no one ever need to work again. Food will be taken care of. AI will make sure housing is very affordable and accessible to everyone. Don't ask me how, but it has the potential because it is not human and it's very, very, very efficient, and has the potential to compute things so it can find the perfect answer. So no one has to work anymore, and we're basically we're gonna like be like the little squishy blobs in like Wall-E, if you've ever watched that movie, on like that like spaceship, right? Where you live to basically be in the Matrix for a more older, thing, where like you simply feed the system just by being alive and you have no actual purpose. The Matrix would have more purpose than that, actually. But anyways, as again, a part of, I actually made a really cool quote a few days ago. Um, but a part of the human condition, like every like different part of evolution, has been a pursuit of difficulty to the point where it gets you a reward, and those rewards have historically been stuff that we haven't been able to tamper with. Dopamine's a thing, but now we know what it is. We know how to tamper with it, and we know how addictions happen. But there was all these different reward systems that your brain's initially wired for. Their neurology is wired for, that's been changed, right? And that's going to even change even more when you don't even need to work a job to stay alive. You were just gonna stay alive. And I don't know what's gonna happen exactly, but the amount of mind fucking that's gonna do to like so many people on large, simply because they're not able to cope with the consequences of not having just having all of their needs satisfied. It's gonna be, it's not necessarily going to be pleasant. And here we are. Yeah. Here's a quote I just made up. Where there is scarcity, there is competition. In this scarce world, our very neurology was wired in this manner. Artificial intelligence, which seeks to remove both scarcity and competition, is therefore anti-human in every manner of speaking. So on one hand, I truly believe that the introduction of AGI and just general AI agenthood, where they can think for themselves and maximize output without having, mass human inputs, that is scary because it threatens to, speed up the first death, where people will lose even more purpose. Where simply staying alive will not do, and more degeneracy will occur. Different types of vices will be created, and we will all be hooked more and more on this sort of, like this like dopamine triangle or sort of cycle, where true fulfillment, which breaks us out of that, will not be able to be found because there's nothing to do anymore. Like recreation is fun because there is life outside of recreation, and it's hard to believe sometimes that celebrities do get very, very sad because they have so much money and nothing to work for, nothing to work for, nothing to do, which is why a family is a must a lot of the times. But even then, it's difficult when you're not like providing anything for them. So you have all these different things, these issues that pop up when you have all of your needs fulfilled. But imagine that on like a mass level, the amount of decadence, the amount of degeneracy, the amount of vices that will be created simply because people don't have any reason to do things anymore. We already have bad people in the world who are working and people who are suffering, right, mentally. But remove the work element, remove like the whole like subsistence to stay alive kind of thing. What's gonna happen then? You really don't know. I don't want to know. We should not have to know. But then, on the other hand, AI has the potential to cure millions of lives. Billions, right? Expand our lifespan. So how can I, as someone who wants to advocate against AI, reasonably tell someone whose grandmother has cancer that the, immaterial culture of a human work ethic matters more than her life? Or you might have cancer in the future. How can I reasonably tell you that your life security is less important than this idea of like humans need to struggle? Because the fact is, we do need to struggle, but we have also tapped into this place where struggle might be able to be eliminated altogether. So how do we grapple with this? How do we tell a cancer patient that we're just not going to find a treatment to them, or like expedite a treatment for them, or an uncurable Little glitch there. I'm not really sure what happened. Encoding overloaded. I see. But yeah, how can we tell someone who is suffering an unimaginable disease like ALS or something that we're just not going to treat them because we don't want to, you make AI develop a lot. And obviously, like, you're gonna have like bad actors, anyways, developing AI. And like, obviously, in America, what we regulate won't regulate China, and then we're gonna lose, and we're all gonna be like CCP drones in like 50 years, right? But if I was someone powerful and I had the chance to like just ban AI altogether, powerful but elected, let's say. I don't think I'll be quite capable of becoming a dictator of the globalized world or anything. But even if I was capable, how would I possibly, in good conscience, tell the cancer patient or the ALS patient that we're just not going to treat them in the pursuit of humans, the fact that humans need to suffer a little bit to live? Because whether or not, like, because like in stories and stuff, we think we believe ourselves to be a main character. Now, and then we believe that we are souls and humans in a story. In a lot of ways, we are, and it's a really good way to think. So it grounds you in reality and it helps you with social relations. But what it forgets is that we also have like base human needs, and that just because like we don't want to, we think not working will be nice, doesn't translate into reality. And that whether we like it or not, part of the evolutionary process has been, for designing people things to like seek out ways to fulfill their basic needs. And that is done by the dopamine cycle, right? You give rewards, physical, by neurochemical reward for doing some things that evolution has over millions of years seen as beneficial for people. Because the thing is, we're the same we're the same species as the people who were in caves ooga booga. But here we are in the information age, handling information that people back then would never have even dreamt of, or maybe it's in their nightmares, right? I don't even know. So we're doing all these different things that we don't really know what's going to happen to our neurology in the future, whether we're going to evolve into something else, and perhaps we will, right? It's just very weird to think that AI has all this potential to just end humanity and just make us all want to kill ourselves or make us slaves to the matrix. But it could also like cure people and make solutions for the homeless. And that's the ultimate thing, right? AI is dangerous because of the immaterial culture of all humans that it threatens to break down. But it's also a difficult issue because it has the technical capacity to do great things. And so AI is a culture. It has both material and immaterial forms. Its immaterial is its impact on humanity that we can't see. The way it makes us lazier, the way it makes us rely on a digital agent, the amount of trust we put in it. That's culture. That changes people, that changes ideas. But the technical side, the material culture that AI is, the artificial intelligence revolution provides, is the benefits, the computation, the health benefits, the efficiency. All of these, both sides are equally real. But what is going to be a priority? That's the question. Thank you for watching, and that's been the Schizo Rant number 2. I really need to sleep now. So, bye bye.